A journalist once, a very, very respected journalist, once asked me, we were at, what you could say is almost a naive question, but it's not a naive question, and it's something that I think of quite a lot. He asked me, do you see the picture before you've pulled the camera to your eye, before you look through the viewfinder, or do you only see it when you've got the viewfinder to your eye? Well, of course you see it long before. I guess my Formula One and following it has been in my family. It's something that my grandfather and my father were big fans of. So it's been something in my life, you know, that I was taking in. One of my earliest childhood memories is watching Jackie Stewart racing the Tyrrell in, I guess it would have been '73. I remember my father, when James Hunt won the World Championship of Fuji in 1976, throwing me up in the air, my head hitting the ceiling, and it became just something that I wanted to do. And you know, you quickly work out that Formula One is the top echelon of the sport, and it becomes where you want to aim for. My love of Formula One motorsport, and then discovering that I liked photography and kind of marrying the two. Going to a circuit which is 25 miles from here, south of London, called Brands Hatch, where my father would take me and drop me off, and quickly realising that I wanted to record what I was seeing on film, if you like, and started taking pictures of the 1982 British Grand Prix, and then really just going as many times as I could, getting better, buying better equipment, spending as much time as I could perfecting what I was doing, and then getting to a point in my early to mid-teens where I thought, okay, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. My first camera I've got in my office, it's a little Kodak 126, nothing flash at all. It's a little Instamatic, click and wind it on. And then I quickly, when I realised that I liked doing what I was doing, moved on to Olympus equipment, and then onto Canon, because basically, you know, at the racetracks, I was watching the cars, photographing the cars, but also watching and photographing the photographers photographing the cars, looking at what gear they had, what pouches they used, what tripods, what monopods, everything, just, you know, because I wanted to do what they do, so modelling myself on them. The photography that really excited me, particularly in a magazine called Grand Prix International, was it showed colours, it showed speed, it showed the trying to get everything across, the assault on the senses that Formula One is, and when it's there in front of you. And really that's what I wanted to get across in my photography, was what it means to me, what that feeling of wanting to scream, you know, when you see someone on a quick lap, and you know, I get goosebumps now just talking about it, you know, the feel of racing. I never wanted to take pictures at very fast shutter speeds with cars parked on the apex effectively, so you can read all the words on the tyres, you know, and all this kind of stuff. So it's trying to bring that all in, and I say it to people who contact me through Twitter or on my website. You've got to stand out. You've got to stand out in everything you do in life. So there's no point in just taking the same pictures as everyone else. There's no point in a new guy aping what I do, if you like, or any of my competitors, or there's no point in me aping what they do. So you've got to try and stand out, and that's what I try and do. There's a need for one to kind of get out there and think about different markets. I do a blog after each Grand Prix, which people can subscribe to and have my gallery of pictures, and a topical blog on perhaps my thoughts of things within the sport that I see or that I know about, or, you know, you're always aware that you can't say too much, but obviously when you work within the sport, you find out things and hear things and see things that people outside are not going to see. Twitter, I got involved with when a journalist called James Allen said to me, look, you might want to get into this, it might flop, it might be big, but I would register. Thank heavens for that, because I registered at F1 photographer, started to pick up followers, and I didn't even know anything about Twitter. I couldn't understand why I was getting this stuff coming up saying such and such is following you. And then redid my website, started really trying to promote stuff because, to be honest, because work had gone away, my photography or shooting film or for whatever reason, work was going away from me. So I had to start promoting in the new way that one needs to. Because if you don't promote yourself, no one else is going to do it. So you've got to get out there and grab the bull by the horns and be proactive. I think it's important to never stop learning. Never stop studying, being very analytical of your work, and trying to appreciate what the people who will look at your work, whether that's a client or a fan of the sport or a reader of a magazine or whoever it is, it's something that's only, the penny has only dropped, if you like, for me in the last, I'd say a couple of years, maybe since doing exhibitions, presenting big A0 poster-sized prints that are framed with fantastic quality glass and showing people that it's not just about pictures this big on the back of your camera or on your phone or whatever. And it's trying to see in your mind how it will look on the computer screen when you're working on it, and then how it will look when it comes out of the printer. We live in such a digitized world where everyone sees pictures on their phones, or you go on websites and you see them that large at maximum size. When you walk into an exhibition and you see a poster size, beautifully presented image of Michael Schumacher, of Ayrton Senna, of Lewis Hamilton, it's different. It makes you feel like, crikey, that's real photography. There is actually more here than just the newspaper on Monday morning. I spent weeks and weeks thinking, I'll put this one in, no I won't, I'll put that one in, waking up at 3 in the morning, think, I need to put that shot of Michael Schumacher in the Ferrari at Monaco in '97 in, or whatever, and running downstairs to pull it out of the files, that kind of thing, and so I don't forget, so that hopefully when people come in, it takes them through a journey, if you like, and it's a kind of, it's a long process, taking a photograph. That's what I've come to learn. It's not just a click, move on to the next one, if you want it to be considered to be something worthy of people spending more than half a minute looking at it. One of my friends, who is a TV news cameraman, he couldn't understand, or he can't understand, how you can there might be a Grand Prix coming up at Monza or Monaco or Suzuka or whatever, and I'll say, yeah, I can't wait to go. It's Japan next. Yeah, but you've been there 36 times, or you've been there 24 times, or whatever. How can you? Isn't it repetitive? Isn't it boring? And I guess the simple answer is yes to him. I can see how that makes sense, but the challenge, I feel, is to bring each time you go something new to the people who will look at your pictures. So that's by using different lenses, shooting at different corners in different light, trying to find new angles. But to be honest, there's something of an obsession within Formula One of, that's his shot, that's my shot, no one's been there before. It's all rubbish because everything's been done. You look at photographers from the 30s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, those kind of era of some great photographers. It's all been done. It's all been done before. You walk into a Grand Prix paddock and there'll be 20 photographers photographing people arriving, and they will take 50 pictures of Jenson Button as he comes through the swipe gate, presents his pass, and BB comes into the paddock. And it's like machine guns going off. And I just wonder, why do they do that? You don't need 50 pictures, you need 2. My mindset is that every picture you should try to make beautiful and as good as you can, and have a reason for taking it, and think in your mind of how you want the end user to see it. Less is more, so potentially every picture could be used in an exhibition, you know, or in a magazine, or on a nice website, or, you know, in a gallery presentation, or wherever you want the end user to see it. And but we do live in a world of bang, 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 next shot, you know, next one, and get it on the website, and so people can look at it for 2 seconds and then go on to the next one, forget your picture. You know, it's nice to try and make people pause for 4 seconds to appreciate what you've been trying to do. Well, when I was awarded the fellowship to the Royal Photographic Society, if I'm perfectly honest, I didn't really, when the letter came, on very nice letter paper, looking very, very posh, and as you would kind of expect from a Royal Society, I guess it was in the middle of the Formula One season, and I didn't really appreciate just what a flattering award it was, and what it meant in the wider photographic world, if you like, than that kind of insular F1 thing. It came from the people within the Royal Photographic Society seeing my work, influential people within that society, seeing my work, liking what I do, watching what I do over a number of years, or what I did over a number of years. And I think in a wider thing, it doesn't bring any kind of more financial benefits or anything like that, but it's just nice to be recognised by your peers, by people that you've respected and admired their work for years, that kind of quietly they were watching what you were doing. It doesn't go to my head, it doesn't make me feel any better about myself as such. It's just when one spends one's life shooting one's passion, if you like, you know, which will combine a passion of photography and Formula One, I certainly struggle with that feeling that it's not real photography. It's not, you know, it's not that kind of Magnum photography or William Eggleston, or, you know, these people that we all look up to and admire in photography. But to get that award from a society that recognises them, or you would think they'd recognise them more, was something of a crossover point for me. I really felt like, crikey, there are people that I consider on a different level to me, perhaps, that are appreciating what I'm trying to do. So the Singapore weekend is an awesome experience, you know, and I think as a photographer, one is getting even more out of it than perhaps the people just coming to watch, because the cars seem to take on a I don't know, almost like a graphic design kind of look. They shine more. They you know, you see brake disc glowing. You see flames from the exhausts. You know, and there's so much more to bring out as a photographer. And of course, the fantastic scene of that temple to capitalism that Singapore is. Abu Dhabi is similar, but a different discipline, in that you get cars running. The race starts at 5 o'clock. Sun sets at about 5. Well, it's setting from about 4:45 to 5:30. It's gone, you know. But it's getting better and better and better, and the shadows are getting longer. The light's getting more golden. You get in certain places on the circuit, you'll get a great big golden turning to orange, turning to magenta, turning to purple, and you know, disappearing. And the cameras these days have allowed one to maximise that, you know, the palette that one can work with. I shudder to think what it would have been like trying to work with film in that situation. You'd just be struggling like crazy, shooting very high ISOs, you know, and dealing with golf ball size grain. But with these cameras now, I was shooting on Canon F1s. They just happened to be called F1. I don't think it had anything to do with the car racing. A fully manual, fantastic looking camera, the Canon F1. And I chopped everything I had in for, and got a big bank loan for the Canon EOS system, which I think it was 1989 when it first came out. And I thought, well, this, not necessarily because it was autofocus, because one doesn't use autofocus that much, certainly not as much as people might think, because it compromises composition, really, the sensitive points that one has to autofocus off. But it was all the other things. It was the ergonomic feel of it. It was the new kind of lighter lenses. Everything seemed to be better. Obviously, digital wasn't a factor then. You were still shooting film. So I changed to that, and then after a while, obviously, digital came along. I was the last guy shooting Formula One to change to digital. Not because I wasn't a fan of digital. I didn't like what it was doing to photography. I felt like it was cheapening photography. But when I changed at the end of 2006, so I went to the first Grand Prix of 2007 with shooting digitally, I quickly realised that what it's all about is basically taking you back to the darkroom. And where I trained as a photographer or as a black and white technician, colour printing technician, mid-late 80s, digital just meant that you could do all that, because all that Photoshop is your box of tricks, box of tools that you took into a black and white darkroom, that you fashioned to dodge and burn and bring different things up in the picture, take things away. And Photoshop allows that. I think almost, Photoshop allows too much these days. What shocked me was just how 1 hour of shooting a qualifying session, if you like, or practice, would be 6 hours sat in front of the computer. And I very quickly got to start hating that processing side. There are lots of photographers who take pictures, run back into the press room, give a card to their technician and have a cup of tea, or go and, go out and take more pictures. I'm not like that. I want to work on the pictures and make, really select what I in the end show to people. I'm probably too fussy about all that, but at the end of the day, what it meant was that you're just spending so much time cleaning the pictures, especially if you shoot at very high apertures to suit the low shutter speeds. Everything on the sensor is sharp. It shocked me just how dirty sensors are, especially if you're shooting in dusty places like Bahrain or Malaysia. I always remember is pretty bad for that. But as far as actually shooting, the mechanics of shooting on location, if you like, out in the field, it's no different to film. It's just that in your mind, when you're shooting this stuff, you know that you can work on the picture. You can make, if there's a driver standing in who's well lit, and you've got a mechanic in the background who perhaps you want to make disappear, you can just burn it in. You're not taking him out. You're not putting wildebeest in the background or setting suns where there shouldn't be. That's cheating, if you like. But you're doing, what I try and do is do what one could do in the black and white or colour darkroom. So dodging and burning and bringing things up in a picture or taking things away, that's all okay and fair game in my book. So I always like to use two cameras the same, because you drop one, you pick the other one up. You want it to be exactly the same in custom functions, in settings, in focus direction, in sensor size, in everything. That's a personal choice, but that's what works for me. Lens-wise, I don't shoot any zooms. I don't like zoom lenses, not necessarily because of a quality issue, but more a moving to the picture. You use prime lenses, i.e. a fixed focal length. You've got to make that picture work by moving about, by walking, by not being lazy. You've got a zoom lens, it's in or out. You don't need to move. I think it makes you lazy as a photographer, personally. The downside of that is that means that there's more weight, because obviously a 70 to 200 lens means you need an 80, a 135 and a 200, that kind of amount of lenses. So you're obviously carrying more weight. But I'm trying each year, as I get older, I guess, to carry less. So in my bag, ready for testing in the first few races of this year, is a 14mm fisheye, 24mm, 50, 100, 200, two converters, 1.4 and a 2 times converter, and in a separate case a 600mm So that's kind of, trying to, that should cover off everything. And if you get in a sticky situation where 100mm doesn't work, but the 200's too strong, these days, the file sizes, the sensor sizes on cameras, you can crop into it and make it look like you were shooting a 135 maybe. I guess my favourite lens for the last few years has been a 50mm f1.2 Canon lens, just because it, you can just leave it on the camera and I feel like almost you could cover a whole race with it. It's a focal length that I've really settled on as kind of favourite, but working in garages and stuff like that, I'll often just have the 50 and a 24 or a 50 and an 80 or 85 or 100. That's a kind of what I like to work with. I think there's something of an obsession with shallow depth of field these days. There's obvious reasons why people want to shoot shallow depth of field, to isolate the subject, to get the fantastic bokeh that you get behind, light points behind with these lenses that they've got these days. But it's, often I'm thinking I should stop down more, I should be using f4, f8, f16, but I do often find myself coming back to those kind of wide open areas. Of course, it makes it hard focusing because your depth of field is very, very small. But the rewards, I think, are worth the many pictures that one throws away. I changed halfway through the season from a Canon 1DS Mark III, and I wasn't the only one, there were lots of photographers in Formula 1 who did it, to the 1DX, because the 1DX has a fantastic sensor. And the reason that a lot of us changed was because we wanted it to be ready for Singapore, particularly Singapore. And the difference was monumental from over the previous year. The colour rendition, the shadow detail. You had to approach it slightly differently, expose slightly differently, because it just brought out so much more. And I don't think we'll get more day-night races, if you like, but I wouldn't mind if we did. When I got the two 1DXs, I asked my wife, try and keep the boys away for a few hours because I have to be, of course it was in mid-season, so you don't get much time to spend just learning the gear, but I didn't want to turn up at the Belgian Grand Prix, which had been the first race to use them at, and be, really, really green with them and not know what I was doing. So, yeah, I try and read every page and really take it in, work out the custom functions, work out what you should use, what you shouldn't, have a look at what people are saying on the internet. The focus side of it, trying to learn all the different parameters of the focus, just getting used to it, setting up the grips, my straps. I'm very particular about, as a lot of photographers are, about how you want it to be, putting lots of tape on it to try and protect it, and also have that tape ready for locking off lenses or that kind of thing. The 1DX particularly, which has a design, and I and a number of other photographers have pointed it out to Canon, where you can, you're walking along between shots, and if you activate one button, which is easy to because it's not covered, and then it spins the wheel, it will select something else. So suddenly the file you're shooting on goes from RAW to small JPEG, and you don't keep checking. There's nothing in the viewfinder to tell you that it's not doing that. Or even if there is, you're just so concentrating on what you're doing. With 3 laps to go of the Japanese Grand Prix, a beautiful sunset, and trying to do your job. It on this particular occasion last year, it spun to shooting small JPEG, which obviously I was pretty upset about. I actually took the cameras to the McLaren guys at the next race and asked them, can you fashion a part? And when you give a Formula 1 mechanic, who are some of the best mechanics in the world, and the hardest working mechanics in the world, when you give them a challenge, which is the challenge I give them is always with a camera, they fashioned little carbon fibre pieces, drilled it, finished it. So now my 1DX doesn't have this design fault anymore. And of course the Canon guys at Suzuka were particularly interested to see this. Early on in my career, at a Formula 3 race in Thruxton, I was, I just had an operation on my foot, and so I couldn't work, but I went to see the race with some friends and watched other photographers working. And what it taught me is this race was 27, 28 minutes long, something like that. And what it taught me, seeing them running around like crazy, you know, whirling dervishes, trying to shoot this, running around shooting that, it taught me that actually you have a lot of time. I always think about that race, 1989 race at Thruxton Formula 3, that you have a lot more time than actually you think that you have got. And you know, as a result, at certain races, you can push it to getting a picture of, as happened at Suzuka last year. I get Vettel coming around waving at the crowd, did some artistic pictures of sunsets with dirty track, that kind of stuff, and rubber everywhere. And then the shuttle bus comes round, takes me back, I get out and I shoot the podium. Most photographers, I'm not saying I've done a better job than them, you're shooting to the brief that one has, but most photographers are back at the podium 10, 15 laps before the end, standing in a queue, waiting to get let out of a gate. It's not making the best use of your time, really, is it? So, when I get ready for a Formula One weekend, or for for photographing a Formula One weekend, I'm not obsessed with it, I would say, although my wife might beg to differ, but I'm thinking about it a long time beforehand. Possibly if I'm shooting at, I don't know, the British Grand Prix, there might be a shot that you're frustrated you couldn't do, or you couldn't get to, or the weather conditions didn't suit it. So I'll think, all right, I'll do that next year. I'm not intending to stop doing my job anytime soon. So, you know you can go back to it. So I'm constantly planning a year, 2, 3 ahead. And of course, some Grand Prix get changed in times of year that they are, so it can change the shots you're doing. But when I get to a circuit, I will draw a map, put where the track of the sun, and then work out where I'm going to go. So in session 1, I'll be here, and then within session 1, I will try and do this shot, and this shot. Session 2, I'll do the pits, if you like. I always try and do at least one session in the pits, unless it's somewhere like Monaco. All the time you're shooting in the pits at Monaco, you can be shooting at Rascash, you can be shooting at Casino Square, you can be shooting in a tunnel, you can be shooting at the seafront chicane, at the swimming pool, whatever, all these places that are so fantastic. I think long and hard about not just the plan of shooting as such, but trying to think about what's going to happen in the race. The likelihood of how many pit stops. You're asking well-informed journalists or people that you might know in a team, but of course they don't really ever want to tell you what the likely number of pit stops will be, when they think the first round of pit stops will be. Of course, over a number of years, this will be the 24th year that I'm shooting Formula One, you get to know pretty much that they'll stop at this particular time, or that they're likely to have 1 or 2 safety car periods, that kind of thing, which can change a race, and you work around that. But I guess because I've been following Formula One since I was very small, you get a good feeling of reading a race. I guess what I'm trying to bring across in my pictures is what it means to me, is what Formula One means to me, what motorsport, what fast cars, what those beautiful machines, fettled and designed and worked on by the best people in the world, the best mechanics, the best designers, the best aerodynamicists, the best engineers, the best engine builders, all this kind of stuff. That the infinitesimally small detail that goes into a Formula One car is the sum of all its parts. And really trying to get across that it's not just 55, 60, 70 laps on a Sunday afternoon. It's a soap opera. It's a circus of about 3,000 guys that, and not so many girls, that move across the world. And it's, these cars are fantastically loud, fantastically fast, and it's just an assault on the senses, Formula One, in every facet of of the sport, you know, and really as a photographer I'm trying to bring that out by using light, by using colour, by using the motion of the cars, the emotion of the drivers and mechanics and team members. It's hands particularly. That's where I try and bring out that there's a guy in the middle of that fire-breathing monster of a car. It's hands can be something, which is not easy. Obviously, you've got to do it on a rear three-quarter shot, but there are ways. You know, there are ways to do it. It's not just because it's not like it was in 1956. Is not a reason to give up. And of course, when drivers get out of cars and show emotion, particularly in things like parc fermé, whether they're beating their chest or whether they're waving a silly finger, that's still an emotion, and you try and bring that out. You know, you try and do something with that. Alonso's celebrations are very good when he gets out of the car, and I know that he's talked particularly to one of my friends, one of the photographers, you know, about celebrations, and the photographer made him aware that you will get more exposure for yourself, for your sponsors, you know, for your team, if the celebration is worthy of that attention. And, you know, when he gets out of the car and beats his chest and stands with his arms wide apart, you know, looking like Christ standing over Rio, you know, that kind of thing, that's fantastic. And you don't know with him what it's going to be for the next race. Schumacher, I was never a great Schumacher fan, but on the podium or in parc fermé, absolutely fantastic. You know, the way he'd spray the champagne, the clenched fists, I know he did the jump, which, you know, whatever, but the way he would get hold of his team and you know, the passion in his face, it would come across. And that's what you're looking for, visually. That's what you're looking for. That's what everyone's looking for, isn't it? You don't want to see the guy just walk away and, you know, look like, well, that happens every other race, you know. I like, as a racing driver, I particularly like Kimi Räikkönen. The way he drives a car, you know, it's Kimi Räikkönen on a quick lap is a fantastic thing to experience. But when he wins a race, it looks like, you know, he's lost a tenner and found a fiver, you know. It doesn't look like he's very excited about it. And but you kind of, it's all part of the different personalities within the sport. I'd rather that than that, I suppose. Kimi's fingernails, for instance, can be a great picture. He chews his fingernails to the quick. They're quite horrible to look at, and it's a kind of window onto his soul, if you like, almost. So when you're shooting the grid, it's not just all about seeing the faces, seeing the cars, that kind of thing. You know, there's you know, Vettel has his different helmet designs. You know, it's all these things that one needs to bring out as a photographer, or if I think one should try to bring out, to show people outside the sport, and many within actually, because people just don't notice these things. What a fantastic, rich tapestry the sport is, you know, and all sports, all things you photograph. You know, there's lots of things probably in tennis that I wouldn't notice that the photographers who shoot it, some of them probably would. The different driver styles, I think, are important to understand. You know, there are many people who don't think, many people who should know better, who don't think that drivers do have differing styles. But of course, every sportsman, every artist, every writer, every TV cameraman has a different style. It's something that you bring to bear on your profession and what you're shooting or writing about or photographing or painting. Part of shooting Formula One is obviously, and part of being a fan of Formula One, which that's what I am at the base level, is understanding how the cars will behave, how they're going to act on the circuit, you know, how they're going to approach a corner. Different drivers will take slightly different lines. You get to, especially when you're shooting through very long lenses, on a particular point on a corner, you're obviously moving for different drivers. So you get to know that Felipe Massa has a different turn-in point to David Coulthard when he was driving, which was a very early turn-in point. Or Michael Schumacher has a slightly different way of setting the car up on the exit of a corner to Jenson Button. You know, and Jenson has a particularly smooth, flowing style. So you can do pictures with him, particularly at somewhere like the Suzuka S's at the back of the pit, a fantastic section of corners, where someone like Vettel and Jensen have a fantastic left foot braking style, so you get more of a flow. So as a photographer using a slower shutter speed, you can get more of a flow, you get more pictures sharp, if you like, or you can use a slower shutter speed because it's more predictable. If you've got a driver who's not quite so cool in a car, if you like, not quite so flowing, not so quite at the end of the day quick, it's more jerky, you know, and we're talking about infinitesimally small differences, but when you're focusing on a car and trying to bring that out as a photographer, it has an effect. And I just think it's important, whether you're a photographer of football or rugby or tennis or ice skating or whatever one is shooting, to have an understanding of where people start and where they're going to finish and how they're going to get there. You know, you bring your expertise to bear. A particularly nice or photogenic part of a Grand Prix is when the Grand Prix is over and all the cars are in Parc Fermé and they're covered in streaks of oil, carbon dust. The cars that park under the podium might have champagne all over them, which will glisten in the evening light, that kind of stuff. You know, and it's trying to bring that out, you know, and show that. At the end of last season, where I was fortunate enough to work in Parc Fermé when Jensen, who won the race, Alonso and Massa came into Parc Fermé, and of course you wanted to get Vettel as well because he's won the world title. I was doing a big piece with the FIA that weekend, so I had fantastic access. It just so happened that it tied in with where the championship was going to be decided. That's just fortunate for me. So when the guys came in, I could be there, but all the time I was really trying not to get in the way of the other photographers. I think it's one of the most important things, absolutely important, and fills me with rage when people don't appreciate it, is having respect for one's fellow professional. But once Sebastian came into Parc Fermé, I know that there's only the TV crews there. Well, you're less worried about getting in the way of TV crews because they're always getting in the way of us. So, you know, there's a bit of kind of argy-bargy goes on there. But yeah, it's trying to get across that emotion, you know, of Sebastian's face, his eyes that wide, you know, and I'm not going to get any pointy fingers in there because he's obviously not in front of all the worldwide media, if you like, as much as he was outside. And they were great pictures for emotion, as was the pictures of Fernando Alonso when he came in to be weighed and just, you know, had a kind of telling smile about how he just failed but, you know, achieved so much. And I guess as a photographer, you're always trying to get where other people can't get. You know, not in the kind of illegal or irresponsible way, which certainly some people do and show scant regard for other photographers and don't care that they're ruining other photographers' pictures. But, you know, one is always trying to plan to get somewhere else, to bring something else out that angle, and that Brazil opportunity was fantastic, you know, and provided pictures that 20, 30, 40, 50 years' time will kind of be unique. So, and of course, when you're looking at pictures, you can get obsessed with, you know, there's a tree in the background and that's ruining the picture. And of course, many other people wouldn't even notice it. Other photographers, you know, like I wouldn't notice what's wrong in their pictures, if you like. What's wrong? You know, who's to say what's wrong? The whole issue of people seeing what one does, you know, one's pictures is something that to a few photographers is annoying. I try not to get upset by it. You know, I have these things coming into my mind. You know, it's people copying one's style or one's locations on circuit is flattering, I suppose. And I never quite understand why one would copy, if you like, because the person you're copying has always gone on and done something else. So you're always one step behind. It comes back to that whole, get a style of your own, you know, perfect that and work on it and get better at that and get known for that. If you just try and ape someone else's style, you're always going to be one step behind, at least one step behind, probably more. I've stopped the practice of looking at other photographers' work. I certainly, when websites became, you know, up and out there, I would kind of look at other stuff and kick myself I didn't do it, or think, well, okay, I outshot that guy at that race, you know. But I now really try and have a blanket ban, if you like, to myself to not look at other photographers' work. Of course, when I get a Japanese magazine or French magazine through, you know, I open it up and you see it's other photographers' work. You can always tell a photographer is looking at a magazine because they open it up and before they've even looked at the picture, they're looking for the credit. And you almost work out, and I was doing that when I was 12 years old, picking up Grand Prix International. I would open it up. If it's taken by Bernard Assay, I've already worked out it'll be a good picture. If it's taken by Stefan Foulon, it's not going to be good enough for me, you know, and that's the wrong way round, of course. But we all do it, all the photographers do it in Formula One. You know, you're very bitchy and catty about, oh, that's not sharp, or that's been done before. As I said, everything's been done before. I think within whatever you do in life, it's important to have a brand. You've got to give people a reason to remember who you are. And I don't mean you run through the streets wearing fluorescent boards saying look at me, but it's you know, with one's photography or one's, you know, whatever you're doing, it's important to make people want to use you, want to pay you. I'm not just interested in racing cars. I'm a photographer. I'm trying to be the best photographer I can be, and a certain style of photography, urban decay and you know, it can be pictures of car parks, it can be pictures of a mouldy old office window, if you like. It can be a litter bin with certain type of litter in it. It can be skid marks on a path, you know. It's trying to bring in everyday life into something, but in a certain style, often shot square, which I guess harks back to a simpler time of photography, if you like, or larger format. There's something about square. And I don't want to kind of just be obsessed with the job, if you like. You know, there is so much, it's such a bigger world than the Formula One paddock. But there are many people in Formula One who've been doing it for, I don't know, 40, 50 years, some people. So it's understandable. It becomes like a lifestyle. I've always felt personally that once I get to my kind of 50s, I'm thinking, you know, which is sadly not that far away, that I don't want to be a 50 plus year old guy running around chasing 22-year-old multimillionaires with the egos the size of small countries, trying to get a picture, trying to make them look good.